Chad is conducting in the corner. Thank you for that symphony,
with
Chad.
the Elder Wand.
That is right. Welcome everyone to episode of Picture This, the show that we do monthly here on the Dill Pickle Movie Network and only on the Dill Pickle Movie Network, where we break down a year in Oscars history. We talk about all the nominees from that given year, and then we rank them. We each pick an actor and actress that we think did the best job. We also give some history about the times of the year we're covering, because it's good to give context, especially filmmaking, since some of it is mostly politically driven. First off, welcome, Chad, co-host Chad. How you doing, Chad?
Thank you. I'm doing great. These were some great movies. I'm glad there was only 5 of them this time, so that it was a little easier.
We had a lot of movies for last month for 2011. We're gonna have a lot of movies for next month, but this month we only have 5, so it's gonna be a nice, easier discussion. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about these movies because there's a lot to talk about. These are 5. I'd say modern classics. I think it's not been enough time to call them classics, but they are teetering on the legendary classic status. A bunch of them are on the AFI list. They're all being talked about still to this day, all 5 of them. So without further ado, the movies we are covering today, in case you didn't watch last time, in case you didn't see the thumbnail or the description, are Barry Lyndon, Dog Day Afternoon, Jaws, Nashville, and the eventual winner, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, all from 1975 for the 1976 Oscars, but it's easier to just refer to them by the year they were made. As Chad said, a really, really great slate of films. But first, we are going to talk about the history of 1975 and kind of set the scene as to what 1975 was for the audiences going to these movies and the Academy voters. So, Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about the year 1975?
1975. We did not exist yet. Okay, no. So the one of the defining things about like not only 1975 but like this decade, I think, is the Watergate scandal happened. It's like it happened like very early on in this year too.
Wow,
that was huge. Wheel of Fortune debuts. Ella Grasso becomes the first female U.S. governor who does not succeed her husband, governor of Connecticut.
Wow,
that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Space Mountain opens in Disney World.
Amazing ride.
Charlie Chaplin is knighted by Elizabeth II.
Ooh, Sir Charlie Chaplin, then.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show opens on Broadway.
That's correct.
Okay, there you go. The song Ding a Dong wins the Eurovision Song Contest for the Netherlands, and it reminded me of Play Ya Ya Ding Dong.
That's right.
Eurovision Song Contest.
Yep.
Busch Gardens in Virginia opens, and fun fact, that was where I rode my first roller coaster, the Loch Ness Monster.
Wow. I was going to say my first roller coaster was probably Space Mountain, so our first roller coaster
nice.
Originated in 1975, guys. There you go. Right? Mine's a little smaller and a little bit more dark and indoors, but still it counts.
Right. Elton John's Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy becomes first album to enter U.S. Billboard 200 album chart at number 1.
Wow.
Jaws is released in theaters and becomes a popular summer hit, setting the standard for Hollywood blockbusters for years to come. More on that later.
Yes.
The Helsinki Accords are signed in Finland. NBC airs the first ever episode of Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
The first host is George Carlin, and the first musical guests are Billy Preston and Janice Ian. In 1975, my Red Sox played the Cincinnati Reds in the World Series.
Did they win?
No, obviously. Dr. No becomes the first Bond film to be broadcast on British television. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen is released as a single, and Iron Maiden was formed as a band.
Wait, so we got Space Mountain, we got SNL, and we got Bohemian Rhapsody in one year. That's pretty freaking cool, dude.
Yeah.
Like Chad said, the summer blockbuster was also invented this year, and that's kind of, I didn't explain earlier, that's why we chose these movies this month. We're in the midst of summer movie season, and we wanted to throw it back to a year where it kind of originated the idea of the summer movie season. 2 of these movies, Jaws and Nashville, came out right in the middle of the summer, 1975. A Dog Day Afternoon, I believe, was right at the end of the summer, maybe early September. But it was a very big summer movie season. Jaws obviously being the revolutionary blockbuster. And because of Ned Beatty's recent passing, also with Nashville, it just felt like a very fitting crop of movies to recognize Ned Beatty, and Jaws being this big summer event. So that's why we chose these movies.
Absolutely.
Chad, do you have any other historical things that happened in 1975? Maybe some births, events, some albums?
No histories, but I do have those other three things you just mentioned. I actually a lot of births because not that long ago.
Yeah.
So you got Dak Shepard, Bradley Cooper, Andrew Yang, Big Boy of Outkast fame, Drew Barrymore, Chelsea Handler, Pedro Pascal, Adam Rodriguez, Aries Spears, Koji Uehara of Red Sox fame, Zach Braff, David Gordon Green, David Harbour, Lou Bega, Johnny Galecki, David Beckham, Christina Hendricks, Dule Hill, Enrique Iglesias,
Wow.
Jack Johnson, Lauren Hill, Andre 3000, also of Outkast fame, Daniel Tosh, Gareth Edwards, Russell Brand, Angelina Jolie, Tobey Maguire, a.k.a. the best Spider-Man, Sufjan Stevens, one of my favorite musicians ever, 50 Cent, Jack White, MIA, Judy Greer, A-Rod, an overrated baseball player. Just kidding. Casey Affleck, Marion Cotillard, David Ortiz, the greatest baseball player ever, Dierks Bentley, Davey Havoc, Paula Patton, Mila Jovovich, and Tiger Woods.
Wow.
Sorry for the baseball slams.
I was going to say, earlier today, the Red Sox beat the Yankees when we're recording this. I told Chad, I'm done talking about baseball. And then, of course, I turn on Cuckoo's Nest, and they just keep talking about the World Series, and now Chad's bringing up baseball here. I can't escape it.
I had already written that, so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I get it.
That's all the baseball until maybe we talk about Cuckoo's Nest.
So they gave us SNL, the best Spider-Man, the best Mandalorian. I mean, they gave us so much in 75. Yeah. Good job, parents of 75. You popped out some amazing babies, including the television show SNL. I'm including with the babies of 75.
Absolutely. Great show.
Great stuff.
We only had one death, fortunately, to mention. And that I saw that I knew who it was. Yeah. Basically. It's Tim Buckley is a singer-songwriter and father of Jeff Buckley.
So
who does an amazing rendition of Grace.
I was going to say,
Hallelujah. Grace is the album.
Yeah. I was about to say, I was like, he gave the world the guy who gave us the most popular Hallelujah. So there you go.
So I have 10 albums I wanted to note, and then we can get into the films. Albums: Wish You Were Here, legendary album by Pink Floyd. Blood on the Tracks by Bob Dylan. Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, the Boss. A Night at the Opera by Queen.
Wow.
Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin, Another Green World by Brian Eno, Horses by Patti Smith, Tonight's the Night by Neil Young, Fleetwood Mac by Fleetwood Mac, Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith.
Wow.
Boom. Great slate of albums.
I was about to say, like, we're not gonna jump the gun, but like I was about to say, this might be the best picture slate of movies ever. And then you have all these albums, and it's like one of the best
70s were a great decade for movies and albums, of course.
1975 just gave us so much goodness. Like I'm elated. I'm already smiling. I'm so excited. Like this is the one show where I know we're not really gonna trash any movies. Like there's always one movie I feel like that one of us just doesn't like every year, but this year it's like, yeah, everything's good. But let's talk about the ceremony itself, because there were some very notable things about the actual ceremony, and then we'll get into some of the movies that didn't make the ceremony. But first, the 48th Academy Awards were held on Monday, March 29th. 1976. Of course, they hold them a few months after the year because they want to get all the December releases in at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in LA. The ceremony was hosted by 5 people, and this is a pretty murderous row of hosts. You had Walter Matthau, George Segal, Goldie Hawn, Singing in the Rain himself, Gene Kelly, and the man on the boat, Quint himself, Robert Shaw, was the 5th host. So
nice.
Another
Did Gene Kelly dance?
I'm not sure. I didn't look that far into it, but Robert Shaw hosting the Oscars that Jaws was nominated and won almost all its awards at. So pretty good night for Jaws and for Robert Shaw. ABC took over the broadcast rights from NBC this year, and this is still the station that they show them on today on ABC. So that's pretty interesting. Also, we had another clean sweep. It was only the second clean sweep in the history of the Oscars, meaning Best Picture, Best Actor, Actress, Screenplay, and Director. It has only happened 3 times in the history of movies, and it had only happened twice tonight. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was the second film ever to do it after it happened one night in 1934, and then it would later happen again in 1991 with Silence of the Lambs. So that was a huge feat, a very unprecedented thing to happen at the Oscars, especially because there were so many good films as is. For them to sweep was pretty impressive. French actress Isabelle Adjani becomes the youngest best actress nominee of all time at 20. She would later be dethroned by Keisha Castle-Hughes in 2004, who was 13, and then again by Kavenzane Wallace in 2013 for Beasts of the Southern Wild. And then at the age of 80, George Burns became the oldest acting and supporting actor awardee. He would later be succeeded by Christopher Plummer, who won in 2011, like we talked about last week, for Beginners. So you had the youngest Best Actress nominee of all time and the oldest Best Supporting Actor winner of all time at the time for this, which was pretty cool. And George Burns is actually the last person to ever receive an acting award at the Oscars who was born in the 19th century, so before the year 1900, which is also pretty cool. So just a lot of very interesting little tidbits that, again, we're not really seeing a ton of. Like, it's not huge groundbreaking Oscar history, but it's interesting Oscar history, just like little tidbits and facts that I picked up along the way. But without further ado, let's get to the movies that sadly did not make the cut for the year 1975. Of course, I said these 5 movies are very good, but of course there are other movies that come out that are very notable. Chad, what were some of the movies you thought were pretty notable that deserve to be maybe nominated or at least mentioned in the conversation?
I really tried to look and see if I can find a bunch, but I only found 2.
Okay, yeah, I only found like 4, so yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I found 2. The one notable film that I didn't necessarily think was Best Picture worthy, but I could probably be persuaded was the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, that was one of mine, yeah.
And then there's one that I might be kind of insane. I'm not sure, but I thought this was kind of a groundbreaking force in comedy that might kind of be Best Picture worthy. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So
definitely, I mean, it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. So
there you go. Boom. All right, I'm not crazy.
I think by Oscar standards, it's not a typical Oscar film. So like, I don't know what its chances were, but definitely, it's still one of the most notable comedies of all time. So like, I definitely think it deserves to be mentioned. I had those 2 as well. The other 2 I had weren't necessarily ones that I would have nominated, but just notable films in general. The film Dolomite came out in 1975.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, Dolomite Is My Name was based on. It's a very bad film, but a very entertaining film, blaxploitation film. Like really,
did you see that one?
I did not see Dolomite. I saw Dolomite Is My Name, the Eddie Murphy movie, which I thought was very good, about a movie that is not very good. It was like The Disaster Artist almost, but for blaxploitation films.
Exactly.
But everyone, if you want to check out a really interesting film, check out Dolomite and then go watch Dolomite Is My Name, because that is a very good movie. And then The Who's Tommy is a very popular album, and it became a movie.
Oh my God!
The album came out earlier. That one? Well, the movie came out this year, and then that inspired the Broadway musical, which would come out in the 90s. Of those 3, I think the album's the best, and then I like the musical, then the movie, but all 3 are very good. So the movie was definitely one of the better.
I haven't seen the musical, but I do love that album, and I did really enjoy that movie. So damn it.
So Pinball Wizard, 1975. Again, absolutely. Great slate of films, and then I also
Elton
wrote down
John is the Pinball Wizard. So
yeah, exactly. I wrote down Rocky Horror and Monty Python as well. But again, like I said, these 5 nominees, I'm very happy with them. I wouldn't have necessarily switched any of them out. Maybe for Monty Python, but again, back into the time, the most Oscar-y movies. These are 5 very good Oscar movies. So like, I'm very happy with this slate, Chad. But
absolutely same.
Why don't we get into the ceremony itself? Because this is going to be fun. Let's go through these 5 movies, talking beat for beat. Not beat for beat, but the most important beats of these movies, and talking about what we liked about them, what we might have not liked about them. Starting with the one that is probably the biggest commitment of time to watch, the one and only Barry Lyndon. Chad, tell us about Barry Lyndon.
Okay, Lord Pickle, I sure will.
Are we going to do the Irish accents now when we talk about it?
We can.
We kind of give a little bit of a twang, if I will. Yeah.
You're better at it than I am. Barry Lyndon, directed by Stanley Kubrick, written by Stanley Kubrick, cinematography by John Alcott. There was no film score. It actually just used pieces of by Bach, Vivaldi, Paisiello, Mozart, and Schubert. Yeah. Starring Michael Hordern, Ryan O'Neal, Marissa Berenson, Patrick McGee, Hardy Kruger, Gay Hamilton, Godfrey Quigley, Stephen Burkhoff, Marie Keane, Murray Melvin, Frank Middlemass, Leon Vitale, Dominic Savage, Leonard Rossiter, Andre Morel, Anthony Sharp, Philip Stone, and David Morley. A lot of kind of no names, and I purposely don't practice doing this just so I can stumble over it on air, and it's funny that way.
You do a better job than most of the Academy presenters do anyway when they're announcing exotic names, so it's okay. It's okay. It's better than Adele Dazeem. Exactly.
So Barry Lyndon was based off the book The Luck of Barry Lyndon by William Makepeace Thackeray. Very British name. So
yes, exactly. Wow. I mean, take us away with the conversation, Chad, because I don't know where to start because it is such a big film.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you know, Stanley Kubrick is one of the biggest like auteurs ever. You know, he makes like these films that are just bigger than life. They're all like some sort of different kind of genre. I mean, you know, this is his first out of like 2 war films he made. But this one is more of like a, you know,
costume drama. Yeah.
British costume drama, like British Irish costume drama type of deal. Yeah, so it's very dramatic. It's not nothing like a Full Metal Jacket.
Right. Well, like you said, he does have so many different types. It's like Full Metal Jacket's his like real intense war film, and then you have the sci-fi film with 2001. You have the horror film, The Shining. You have Eyes Wide Shut, which is more like an erotic romance. Like there are so many different genres. Doctor Strangelove is a comedy, like farce. Like there's so many different.
That's another war movie. Duh. That's right.
But even then, it's a war, but it's a subgenre of war. Like he has done so many different genres. It's like the style's all this similar, and his vision is similar. But every single movie, like you can appeal to totally different people. Someone might find 2001 to be a slog, but love this. Some people might find this to be boring and might love 2001. Like he has something for everyone, which I've always appreciated about him.
And he like kind of like perfects like everything he does, but like then again, like like you said, like he appeals to everybody else, but it's just people might be like kind of surprised that like he's done like all these different movies. They'll go like, wait, that was also Stanley Kubrick? Holy crap, and they're all like pretty much like groundbreaking in some sort of way. So, and with this, I got the Criterion release of it. I have it back there. So I was kind of reading I didn't watch all the special features, but I was reading some of the stuff about it, and like they didn't build any sets. They didn't like block off like whole buildings or anything like this. They actually just shot this in like real buildings that people were touring in. And they just kind of like shot around people touring.
Wow, and that's amazing because you wouldn't even know. Like it looks so authentic. There's times where it almost feels like a documentary. Like a few of these movies are so just like raw and in the moment. A lot of them on this list that makes you feel like you're just watching a piece of history rather than someone putting on a piece of history, which is just genius to me.
That's one of the things I loved about it is the authenticity of it. It just feels like you're in that time period. And, that's like one of the big things of, I know a movie you didn't like that much, but The Witch that I really liked was just when they like take it and they just go, no, this is going to be as authentic as it can be. And boom, it just,
and what I appreciate about Barry Lyndon too, is that like, on face value, when you just look at pictures of it, it does look like your standard costume drama, people talking in rooms with lavish accents and pretty costumes, but it's really a story about, someone who basically backstabs people and tricks his way to the top, and it's entertaining seeing him kind of like maneuver through that first half, and then the second half seeing the downfall and the crumble. It almost reminds me of Kubrick's version of like what The Irishman is to Scorsese, where it's this huge epic. The first half is seeing basically his whole life of how he gets to one point and then an immediate turn into just this spiral, this downfall. I think it's really interesting how it's long, but at the same time, I think the length is needed to tell the full, complete picture, to understand every point of the way. Because Barry in the first half, like the first 20 minutes, is totally different than the Barry you see at the very end. It's almost unrecognizable, and that's impressive.
Arc. It's a rise and fall of a character, and you're there the whole way with them. You might be rooting for him like the first half, and then slowly you're like, is this a protagonist? And am I actually rooting for this guy? Like, he's kind of an asshole. And he like, what does he want? Like he wants like just to be like someone of prestige and worth, I guess, because he grew from like very simple beginnings. He sees this guy that gets this girl that he really likes, and he's like, oh well, he's got prestige, I want that. And then like he tries to go get it, and he ends up just doing it like in all the wrong ways, and he ends up tearing this family apart, the Lyndon. So
and it's just so interesting because halfway through you're introduced to all these main characters that become essentially the main characters of the second half, and it's just interesting how you see him meet his kid and you think there's going to be like an endearing relationship, and then this ends up being the kid. You see him at older and seeing that that's the person who basically ruins his life for him, and it's a question of is this kid ruining Barry's life out of like jealousy and rage and not wanting him there, or is Barry ruining his own life and projecting it onto the kid that just projected it back on himself? It's like really who's to blame. And I think a lot of these movies, there are characters that make questionable decisions and you have to really ask yourself, am I rooting for Barry or am I rooting against Barry? But at the same time, I don't want to root for the kid because he is a little douchebag at times, you know? So it's really interesting kind of where to find where your loyalties lie. And that's what's so great about the film is that you don't have to give the answer. You don't have to know who you're rooting for.
That's very interesting because I kind of took a little bit of a different perspective because Lord Bullingdon, I really kind of sympathized with him quite a bit actually because, well, I mean, at first he seems like a brat, but then like you kind of slowly, especially because, you know, you're wondering, is he going to do something as this little kid to this guy or something that he hates?
Right.
And then you see the time move on like really quick. And he's older now, and you know the son that Barry had with the lady, you know, grew up, and then you know, so he's seeing this kid come up, and then he's like, you know, this guy, like my dad died, and this guy has come over here, and he doesn't even love them for them. He just wants the power and the prestige, just kind of like from his viewpoint. So like I'm kind of sitting there thinking like, yeah, this kid has a point to really hate this guy, or at least from his point of view, he really just doesn't believe that he's, you know, forthright. He's, you know, genuine. So
then I have a question for you, Chad. So then at the duel at the end, when it's the two of them, were you rooting for Lord Bullingdon then? Because it was interesting when he shot the gun on accident and went, do I get another fire? And they said no. I was almost happy. I was like, okay, good. So now, and I like when Barry then shoots it in the ground and he's like, I'm not going to kill you because I want to truce. But then, of course, he does get that shot on him. And that was what was so interesting for me because I agree with you. I was like on the same wavelength of feeling sympathy for this kid, obviously, especially when he gets beat up by his father. Like, that's terrible. But then in that moment, I'm rooting for Barry. And that's what's so interesting is I'm like, I don't know necessarily if I want either of them to lose or win. You know, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a big it's like a pressure in a bottle slowly building and building and building to that part where he gives them that beating in front of everybody, and that's what starts the downfall because everyone in this high society goes, oh, this is the guy we want to be in our secret high society club. I don't think so. And you know, so he slowly starts to lose all of his friends, money, prestige. And then you get that one part, like, you know, it was kind of like dragging on a little bit, you know, from time to time. And then like, you know, as he starts to lose all this stuff. And then finally, when the kid, Lord Bullingdon comes up with then, you know, kind of lifts his chin up with the cane or whatever he's got. And he's like, you know, I want satisfaction. And then they go to duel. And yeah, you explained the scene perfectly. And my point of view from it was exactly, I love that in this moment, I thought Lord Bullingdon started to become the brat again because you see Barry, he fires into the ground and then you're like, good on you. You're finally being that influence on this kid that you should have been from day one. And you're finally doing something good with your life now. And, you know, and then he loses his leg for it, and is his leg, and
I love that last shot how it kind of freezes on him getting into the carriage because you see it and you're like, wow, he like has no leg there. Like, how does he even maneuver because he goes, no, I don't need the help, and then he gets himself up, and then it freezes because you know the next step is shit. Wait, I do need help because I can't get into this carriage, and it's one of those looming shots where you're like, oh, like his whole life is ruined just because of that, because of an event that happened hours before in the film that just unraveled to this point. I agree with you when you said it does drag a bit. I mean, obviously with the length, there are going to be moments where it does start to lose a little bit of, and you lose a little interest just because it's so long, and it's almost like some scenes when they do take their time do feel their length. And I think that's the only thing against it. And I think that's the same with a lot of his films, though, is that he does take his time and he does relish in some of that like scenery and the costumes and stuff. And that's what I appreciated about it. Even if I wasn't as invested in the story, I could then be like, well, what's going on visually that I can,
Yeah.
take away from, and what I can enjoy visually, because it is a visual a feast for the eyes. It is
Oh,
a
yeah.
gorgeous film. I mean, the cinematography is considered some of the most groundbreaking of all time. I mean, they did those double shots where you'd get these slow zooms backwards, and then it would become another shot, and all the candlelight. I mean, they lit entire scenes by candlelight. It's so
Candlelight,
impressive.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
just
there
what
was
I really appreciate about it. Yeah.
in the Criterion release, actually, there's like pages in this booklet just on
Wow.
like the types of lenses they used, how
Cool.
they lit some of the scenes, like you're talking about with candles, and just all this stuff. I'm not a photography guy, so I
Right.
just kind of like skip some of those pages. But I was
Yeah.
like, I don't care what the focal lens of the camera you use, but
Right.
but I will say, from a layman like photography, actually looking at the stuff, I will say that, yeah, a lot of the scenes, there are some shots that linger so long just on Lady Lyndon, sometimes, with her, like, I think holding the baby at times, and it just kind of like zooms out or just will linger on her. And it's almost kind of like with like Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's like some of these are just like portraits that you could paint. And it's just, I think when, he does stuff like that, it just adds a certain like, gravitas, like epic element to the film, I feel like. So
Yeah,
I think even though it does drag a little bit, to some people that might be good, that it does linger a little more.
And that's what you said. He's an auteur, so like you see that again in 2001. Even The Shining, you see that in.
And I love 2001's pacing. I love when he takes the time to
and that's what's
show
so
this stuff. Like like in Star Wars, if they would have lingered even more on the ship, going like one of the first shots, the ship, like if they would have did that a little bit longer, it's like, well, look at all the work we did to actually make this stuff, like it's beautiful. Watch it, look at it.
Yeah. I have to say also, just that one moment is just so devastating when he's sitting with his son in the bed, and he's basically telling him, you're not going to die, you're not going to die. And the wife doesn't even answer him because she knows, and she can't lie to her kid.
If I die, will I go to heaven?
Of course you will, my darling. But you're not going to die.
And it's, again, one of those questions of, like, as a parent, do you lie and say you're going to be okay? Or are you a realist? Or do you not say anything at all? And you see how these different parents have this different approach, and his dying wish is for them to resolve what they have. And I think deep down, Barry Lyndon does want to resolve what he has with her to an extent and at least create some peace. But then it's Lord Bullington who makes it impossible for that to happen, and kind of some of Barry's selfishness himself. But that moment where he's just sitting with his kid and then immediately cuts to the coffin. The shaky cam and the score just pounding down. That moment, I gasped. Just because what's coming, because you know it's coming, but just the crisp cut to the coffin, I mean, that just made me openly just like open mouth crying. Like I was just so shocked. Like it, and I think that was what really reeled me back in, because up till then I was like kind of like, okay, all right, because the Up and Up is so almost not comedic, but there's like a lot of fun bits, like him stealing the horse and the clothes, and different little moments that are entertaining. And then when he's going on that downfall, it's such a I don't want to say slog because that makes it sound negative, but it is very heavy, that it does start to like really weigh you down, and then that one moment just hits you, and it's just like, ooh, it sends you into a whole nother world.
They nailed that scene, like with the whole because when that scene happened, I was like, oh, what happened to the horse? Is the horse okay? But then like the kid, I'm like that with animals in movies. I'm like, you better not have hurt that horse. Same with War Horse. But yeah, when the kid, he all he wants is a horse, and then this happens. He's like, I told you not to go to that farm. And then all of a sudden, just that conversation, just everybody knows what's going to happen, and they gotta sit there and lie to this kid. And just if you've ever just I don't think you can ever get over the loss of a child like that. So it's just they crushed that part. But you did bring up, when you talked about comedy, I kind of remembered that one part when in the very beginning, when he gets his horse stolen, they make him walk. And he's like, it's just like the nicest theft ever. It's like, well, not nice, but he's like, may I request that I keep the horse? And they're like, unfortunately, we have to decline your request because, we can't have you travel as fast as us. So.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Yeah, it's just layered, not just with drama, but a lot of great comedy too. So I think Barry Lyndon it really is just a very successful period piece, and it doesn't feel like every other period piece, which is really nice.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Barry Lyndon was actually nominated for 7 awards, and it won 4 awards. So it actually won more awards than more than half of its awards, which was really nice. It was nominated, of course, for Best Picture, and then Best Director for Stanley Kubrick, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It didn't win any of those, but it did win 4 big ones, which was the adapted score. So that's what you're saying with all the different elements.
Right.
They used to have an original score, and then they would have an adapted score for movies that borrowed pieces of music. I wish they still did it, because then Nomadland would have another Oscar.
Yeah.
And then costumes, it won Best Art Direction, which is the production design, of course, and then it won cinematography. So those are the 4. I don't know if any other films, other films deserved any of those over that, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe Jaws for cinematography, but
maybe. But Candlelight, dude.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, but I agree with you. We'll get there when we get with Jaws. I mean, this is such a good slate of movies. But you were worried about the horse, but let's talk about the dog. Let's talk about the Dog Day Afternoon, shall we? That's the first segue of the day. We're off to an okay start. So Chad, tell us about the second movie here, Dog Day.
Oh yes, Roof. Dog Day Afternoon, directed by Sidney Lumet, written by Frank Pearson, cinematography by Victor J. Kemper, starring Al Pacino, John Cazale, Charles Durning, Chris Sarandon, Penelope Allen, Sully Boyer, Susan Peretz, James Broderick, Lance Henriksen, Carol Kane, Marsha Jean Kurtz, and John Marriott. And there's no score in this one.
Not at all. Not a peep. Just one song to open the movie, and
and it's Elton John's song. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Shoot, I'm blanking on the name of it.
I can't remember what it was either. You can look that up.
Amarina. There it is.
Yes, that's it. Great song. Yeah.
Really, really amazing song. I mean, it's interesting. That's the first thing you bring up is the no score, which we'll talk about in a sec. But give us a little synopsis first before we dive into the scorelessness.
Sure. Actually, so Dog Day Afternoon is basically just it's a movie about a bank robbery, but it's a lot more than that. It's about kind of being broken down, that you feel, reduced to doing something like this. And, that's pretty much it. It's just, a couple guys, or a few guys, actually, one chicken's out early on, feel like they have no other options but to rob a bank, get some money so they can support their families.
Most specifically, a sex change for the main character's partner. But what's interesting is we don't know all this right off the bat. And that's one of the things I love so much about this film, is just how the information, it thrusts you right into the action. It takes the first 2 minutes playing the song, the Elton John song, to set up exactly what this atmosphere is like, the weather, the heat, because that plays the traffic as well. Exactly. The atmosphere of this area in Brooklyn, and then it immediately just thrusts you into this bank robbery, and you're there until the very end when he's in handcuffs going away to the police, to jail. So it's really just watching. It's a bottle film, and we've seen Sidney Lumet. He has made one of the best bottle films of all time. So it's very similar, and that could also be a sense of auteurism, where you have this one story that's set in one location, pretty much. I mean, except for the airplane at the end, but the one location, the whole film. And it just stays there, and it's about the discussions. There's no music aside from the opening song, which I think is really effective, because the sounds of the street are the score of the film itself, which I think is powerful. And it's just so funny how different things just come up as the plot progresses. So we don't even know their full motives till the very end. We don't get the full picture until later on about who this guy is exactly, who he's robbing this bank for, what's Sal's deal in this, what is his payout from this, what does he gain, or what doesn't he gain, what is lost, of course, obviously his life at the end of it, but that's just really, really interesting. I think it's one of the best bank robbery heist films ever, because it is so just raw and authentic.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of bank robbery movies. You got what was it, Inside Man? You got
The Town.
the town. You have
The
Baby
opening of
Driver.
Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight, yeah, there's some great sequences there. Just a note, they do kind of cut away a couple times, like to the other building and to Al Pacino's house when they talk to his wife, stuff like that. But it's not much.
Day and time.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, absolutely. And I thought Al Pacino was fantastic in this movie. Just you really see like his. You really see like his, nervousness and like, because he's kind of the middle one. I feel like Sal is the one who's kind of like, well, he gets nervous a little bit later, but like, he's kind of like, John, he's already got the gun out. The one guy just was like, I can't do this. I'm gone. See ya. There's a girl under the desk, by the way. Al Pacino's the one that's kind of like, he's got that nervousness, but then he's also got the no. You have forced me to do this. Society has forced me to do this. And this is another reason I love this movie is because it's kind of political too, where it's 100%. It's like, you guys have made it to where I can't get a job. I'm not a part of a union. All the non-union jobs suck. It's really hard to get into a union. So I have no other choice. I have to, pay for a sex change operation, but then I also have to like support my family that I have too. And, just all this stuff. And you're almost wondering like, why don't more people do things like this? When you got the heat, you got the, the crazy traffic and people everywhere. And like, you don't have a job and just, it's so packed. It's almost like a bottle, and then he's forced to explode, just like from Barry Lyndon, where it's like it's slowly building, and then what the build up happens before the movie, and then this is the pop.
And it makes it very clear from the beginning why more people don't do this. It's because they're really bad at it.
Come on, quit while you're ahead. All you got is attempted robbery. Armed robbery. All right, armed then.
Because they are.
Right.
They go in with no planning, and they really are really terrible bank robbers. Even Sal, who like puts on the act at first, as the movie goes on, you start to see that Sal is more self-conscious. He does have these doubts. He's afraid of flying because he's never flown before. And at the end, these people have actually bonded with them because they are just regular people.
Yeah, the people in the bank
doing something stupid. Yeah. Exactly. They're doing something stupid, but even then, like they're not threatening anyone because they're not successful bank robbers. They don't have a plan. They're not the baby drivers who have this getaway car that can literally dodge and turn in every single street. They're just not that. They're the guys who were like, well, don't leave the keys because we need the car at the end of it.
Don't take the car, please. We need the car.
Exactly. So I think that's just another charm about this movie is seeing them almost become better bank robbers because they're terrible bank robbers. Like they end up making a successful deal. Eventually they are outsmarted, but up until the very end at the airport, like they get everything they want. But at the end, was it worth it? And that's the big question. And obviously it's not because, it ends up being that Sal loses his life for it.
I'm ready.
And that performance is just one of the most heartbreaking ones. I think John Cazale is a very underrated actor. He's only been in 5 movies.
That's how you say it?
Ever. Yeah, John Cazale.
He's in some of the best movies, though.
Yeah, exactly. He was in 5 movies. He was in The Godfather. He was in Dog Day Afternoon, Godfather 2, The Conversation, and Deer Hunter. And then right before the Deer Hunter got released in theaters, he died of cancer. And unfortunately, did not get to live the rest of his life. There was an amazing documentary. When I saw this movie, I watched it for the first time in a film course in college, and it was interesting because the night before I had another assignment for another class, and I stayed up literally all night doing it. So I had no sleep, and I watched Dog Day Afternoon. I was so tired, and I was just very like, it was hot outside, so I was tired. I was warm. I like felt like I was in the movie itself. Up all night watching this movie early in the morning because my class was at like 11 a.m. And then afterwards he showed us this documentary. It's only about an hour long. It was on HBO. I forget the name of it. I Knew It Was You. That was it called. I Knew It Was You. It was a Sundance documentary about John Cazale's life. Wasn't
that like a Godfather quote?
Maybe, yeah, I think so. Because he was in The Godfather, exactly. It was just really interesting to see his whole life in just those 5 years and how much of an impact he had on the people around him. Because he never plays the lead role; he's always kind of like a supporting role, but he gives so much. And I heard in an interview Al Pacino say that like most of what he learned as an actor was from watching John, and because he was in
Nice.
a lot of those movies with him. He was in
Mhm.
both Godfathers and this. Just seeing how John act. I mean, he was literally married to Meryl Streep until he died. So
Wow.
you know,
Okay.
you could say that she got some of the acting bug from him as well. So
Nice.
definitely a legend on the silver
Oh, yeah.
screen in such a very small amount of time. But I did want to point out his talents and recommend the documentary, because I remember sitting in that class so tired and just being utterly amazed by this movie, and then of course by his life and his story. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I should check that out. I like just like watching him in this movie, because like you kind of start out with him. He seems like the most confident one, like you said. Like you slowly realize like that he has nothing figured out either. He's just as clueless on this as Al Pacino is. And towards the end, like when they're in the car, they all finally get in that car. They, we're surrounded by the girls. Like, we got to get in this car, and then they jump in the car. And then, right after that, the FBI guys like basically tell him, hey, have that gun pointed up. And then I remember, because I've seen the movie before, and I was like, I remember something about this weasel FBI agent who wants to trick him so he can just shoot him in the damn head. And just like, just for me, I'm just like, I know. I'm like, I know these guys are armed robbers, but for me, I'm just like, it's unnecessary. Do you think if they really were going to kill somebody that they were going to do it already? Like, they just didn't want to like spend the time like transporting them somewhere where they wanted to go. Like, they chose to end somebody's life instead.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's so interesting about this, and with Barry Lyndon and with Cuckoo's Nest, which we'll get to, is these protagonists are doing things that are not conventionally accepted, and they aren't even accepted in this film. Like, we see them at first, we're like, no, I mean, obviously they're the protagonists, so we kind of have to root for them, but at the same time, we're like, what you're doing is wrong. But by the end, you really grow connected to these characters, both Sonny and Sal. The thing with Sonny is that he almost kind of loves the fame and attention of it, and he almost starts relishing in it. Like when he goes outside and he kind of like,
Attica!
Right, exactly. So he wears a lot of his thoughts on his sleeve. Like, he actually is so extroverted that he lets everyone know what he's feeling. Whereas Sal, I think, bottles it up a lot. It's a lot of, you have to kind of look at John Cazale's face and see what he's thinking rather than hearing it like Al Pacino. Because Al Pacino, the two of them could not be any different, could not be more different, just their mannerisms. And again, like, Al Pacino's performance is also just spectacular. I mean, the way he just, like you said, the manic energy, the chaos, the nervousness, because again, it's so hot, and that's such a
all of that
detail.
Yeah.
It's such an important detail, because as the movie goes on, he gets sweatier and sweatier and sweatier, and it's just like, and you relate because you're nervous and you're getting sweaty watching it. It's just, it's a really great performance, just the two of them together, and then all the supporting characters. Chris Sarandon was nominated for this as well as Leon, his partner, his wife, who's trying to get a sex change, and I think that's also a really interesting relationship, because then that kind of does point out some of the more flaws in Sonny's character as well, because at this point you're thinking, oh, he's just a regular guy who doesn't know what he's doing, but then it turns out he wasn't the best to Leon at all times. He was kind of a douchebag to her at times. So and
you also see just that, for that point, you also see like, just people at that time, especially maybe less today, but like Sal, for a lot of it, when that started to come out, his biggest thing was like, make sure that people don't think I'm gay. Right. And you're like, oh, damn, like you don't want to make it out of there alive. Your just whole concern is just what people think of you. And like, you think that's going to make them think worse of you. But that was just kind of a little like, okay, Sal.
Right. But also at the time, you make a good point, because I think just having that conversation at all is really progressive for the time. The fact that the main motive is to get Leon a sex change. I mean, he obviously has other motives for his kids, like you said, supporting his family, but the main goal is like, I'm getting this money for you, and he's doing it for that. And like, this was not, transgender people were not represented in film at all, and then we get this and Rocky Horror in the same year. I think that's super huge. That's really, really great.
I mean, transgender issues are still like confusing for a lot of people today. Like, we just got to get the knowledge out there, but like even today it's hard. And this was like, what, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
It's like a little while ago. So it's very, progressive. Yeah.
And again, like you said, there's still not the full. It's still not entirely as progressive as it is today, because you have those moments where he's like, make sure I'm not a homosexual, make sure I'm not a homosexual.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it just shows how layered the conversations are on their own. Just the fact that they're bringing up homosexuality in this, because at first you think you could just make him a bank robber robbing for his family. You could. I mean, it's based on a true story, but you can spin the details. You don't have to make it that, especially for a studio film. That's risky to put it in theaters and hope you can make money. It was one of the top 5 grossers of the year. So it obviously shows that, maybe people were willing to have that conversation. And I think that's what Sidney Lumet does so well, is he brings those conversations to the table.
And I feel like a lot of the movie just handled that all so tastefully. Like it could have been handled like, like some movies do, like Bill and Ted's, where they have like slurs and stuff like that. And it's like, it didn't overuse any of that, or you didn't have like all these characters who are like the, crazy, like, caricature of like a big homophobe or anything like that. You didn't have anything like that. So I thought that was pretty great too. So people were all kind of real. And but I just did want to kind of go back real quick to Al Pacino's performance, because like you kind of reminded me of like how because at first he's like cracking the door open, like, I want to talk to someone. You got all those people, back them up. I don't want to come out. And then like he's out there at some point, the shirt like taking clothes off and just like running around, Attica, and just just all the manic energy, like you said. Like he's just such a a great complex character that I just thought was really great.
It's interesting because it's a very high energy performance the whole way through, but then you have those moments where he's on the phone, and that's really where you see the true Sonny come out, because the Sonny you see outside, that's almost kind of an act, it seems like, because he's enjoying this attention. But when you see him talking to Leon and then talking to his wife on the phone also, like that's really powerful, because you kind of can see him in his rawest form, and you see that he is scared. It's just he's not gonna put it on and make it known that he is. Just a really great film. I mean, I love how it is only that one day, and there's no score, there's nothing fancy about it, there's no flair. It's just the story, and it's just the moment, and I like that.
And good on Sidney Lumet for like just knowing what the film needed, and just, well, this film doesn't need a score. I don't need to use this score for any purpose. Let's not have one.
Right.
Okay.
So just a really, really solid movie. Any last thoughts before I get into the Oscar it won? Because it only won one, but it was a well-deserved one.
Shame. Okay, cool. No, I'm good.
All right. So it had 6 nominations. It was nominated for Best Picture. Sidney Lumet was nominated for Best Director. Al Pacino was nominated for Best Actor. Actually, Chris Sarandon was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Leon, and it was nominated for Best Editing. But the one award it did win, which I think we've both talked about, how they didn't rely on the theatrics, they didn't rely on the score, because they just had a beautiful script to work with. It was Best Original Screenplay. It won the award for.
Good job.
Which I'm really, really happy with, because it is such a movie reliant on just the material and the story, and it kind of works itself. I mean, Sidney Lumet obviously does such an amazing job with it, but it's like the script is so strong that you can rely on the script itself to do a lot of the heavy lifting for this film. So just a beautiful film, a really, really great film, and a heartbreaking ending. So. All right, so we're now moving from the streets of Brooklyn to the waters of Martha's Vineyard, or as we like to call it in fictional land, Amity Island. So why don't we go to Steven Spielberg's Jaws? We're talking about Jaws. I didn't have a segue plan, so I had to literally make one on the spot, because usually I think of the segues like a good 30 seconds before I say them, but now I was like, oh shoot, I have to segue this, and then I forgot where they actually filmed it, and then I was like, Martha's Vineyard, sure, because they shot in Martha's Vineyard, but it's supposed to be Amity Island.
Amity Island, yep.
Great. Tell us about Jaws, Chad.
All right. Jaws, directed by the great Steven Spielberg, written by Peter Benchley and Carl Gottlieb. Cinematography by Bill Butler, music by the great John Williams. Starring Roy Scheider, Lorraine Gary, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, Murray Hamilton, Susan Backliny, Lee Fierro, Jeffrey Voorhees, dope name, and Chris Rebello, based off the book Jaws by Peter Benchley. So there you go. Synopsis. police guy moves to Amity Island where there is a shark shows up and it starts eating people, but like very low key. And then he has to kind of like figure this out, like because he's got like this mayor that's against him, who doesn't believe that this shark is a big problem. Really just wants people to come to the island and enjoy the big fun summer beach charades.
Season, yeah.
And really this cop is kind of like caught between these horrific things that are happening and this crazy mayor. And then once they get past all that, they got to go hunt a shark. So that's pretty much it.
That's the premise. I mean, if you haven't heard of Jaws, where have you been?
Right.
But thank you, Chad, for telling people. It's Jaws. So there's a lot that doesn't need to be said, but we'll still say it anyway. I mean, it's one of the landmarks of at least blockbuster filmmaking, and of course Steven Spielberg's career as a whole. What are your thoughts on Jaws?
It's weird. I didn't actually grow up with this as a kid, like a lot of people did. I know it's crazy interesting because back then you got away with a lot in the 70s. It was rated PG, but it should have been R. Just because of the violence and stuff like that. But this movie, I have grown appreciation for. One of my favorite critics, Dan Murrell, is a big Jaws fan, and so he made this video essay that I watched about Jaws. So I had seen it maybe a couple times before that, but like after watching that and just kind of like thinking about it more, I saw it at a drive-in, and then I watched it for this, and I really love watching this movie now. It's just such a great masterpiece of a film. It's definitely one of Spielberg's best. And some may say it's even a perfect film or near perfect film. So I love watching this one for sure. My wife loves it. We're both really big into horror, and this is definitely a really like one of the best creature features you can find. Yeah. So
I think a lot of people say, oh, it's just a thriller film. It's more of an adventure film, but I really do think it fits more in the horror category.
Got that too.
I mean, it scares the hell out of me every time I watch it. And when people ask what's your favorite horror film, this is the first thing I say. And then they say that's not a horror film, and I say, if you watch Jaws while sitting, say it was a drive-in, and I've seen pictures of this, if it was a drive-in, except instead of cars, you were sitting on an inner tube in the water or a little canoe. If you were watching Jaws, tell me you wouldn't be scared. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, tell me you could sit in the water. Tell me you could go for a swim after seeing Jaws and not be scared for your life. Like, this is a scary-ass movie. And I'm really, really still to this day, every time I watch it, I'm very scared to go in the water because of it.
There's so many sequences. Like when I'm ever in like an ocean or something like that, you're always wondering what's under me right now, especially if like you're not touching the bottom.
Right.
What's under me right now, especially if it's like dirty, you can't really see, deep or anything like that. I've scuba dived before, and like, you're always kind of like wondering, like, is there something really creepy right around the corner? But like in this movie, there's so many sequences with the, just the tension with the music from John Williams, just, building that you did a great rendition of it earlier. You have like so many sequences, like, you have the jump scare, when Richard Dreyfuss is diving on that crashed ship that I guess the shark attacked, right? And like the shots of him doing the chum into the water, and then the shark pokes up, and stuff like that. Do you have any more
iconic? Yeah, so many iconic shots, and that's the best thing. I know we talked earlier, like Barry Lyndon was obviously revolutionary in its cinematography, but I do agree this is a very, if not a runner-up, definitely in the conversation, because I just think the actual craft of the shark and what we see versus what we don't see is so impactful, and using that music as the voice of the shark, almost like when there's no music and you see the fin. Now watching it, I'm like, oh, that's not a shark because there's no music. And I think that's interesting. But then when you hear music, but you don't see a shark, I think that's even more effective, because then you're like, wait, where is it? Wait, is it here? Where is it? And I think that's just so impactful and so scary. And John Williams, he's done more interestingly melodic scores in his career, but I think this is the score that works best for the actual material he's scoring. Like I think if I wanted to sit down, I'd listen to something from like E.T. or Star Wars before I'd listen to this. But I think the music works better in context for this film above all these other films.
E.T. does have that bike takeoff part, but other than that, I would say that I agree with you for sure.
Because it's the voice of a character in this, essentially.
Exactly. And you also like noted the one thing that I wasn't really thinking about, but it's a great point, is his music is so what do you call it? Where it's just
like selective when he decides.
no, it's it fills you with dread. It fills you with dread. But then, like you said, exactly that one point where he's doing the chum in the water. There's no music there, is there?
You heard him. Slow ahead.
And then the shark just pops up. You're definitely not expecting, because they have that Pavlovian thing where you hear the music, you expect the shark to come. But if there's no music and the shark pops up, holy shit, you tricked me. So, and then that's scary. That's scary as hell right there.
Oh, yeah.
The other sequence when Richard Dreyfuss decides, brilliant idea, right? He wants to go down in this cage, and they lower him down, and you're like, oh, what are you doing? This thing is so huge. And, just that whole scene is just, tension the whole time. You're just like, is this thing going to kill him? What's going to happen? And then there's jump scares in there when, he's looking and it's panning. And then, finally it attacks him and, from the other side or whatever. And you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, well, my favorite slasher of all time is Michael Myers, because he doesn't need a motive. He's just
slasher,
evil.
Right?
Yeah, he's just evil, and that's his whole thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a motive. He's just evil, and I think Jaws is the same thing. This shark doesn't have a motive. It's literally just hunting for sport. Like, it's literally not like there's no motive of like, well, you betrayed me, so I'm gonna kill you, or I like watching horror movies, so I'm gonna like be a killer in my own horror movie, or you wronged me and I'm gonna get revenge. There's none of that. It's literally
not until the sequel.
Well, yeah, which I've never even seen, because
I haven't either.
people could say it's a very simple premise, shark in the water. Of course, it's going to be scary, whatever. But how many times have they tried to redo Jaws, and is it not just nowhere close to the same?
The
quality?
closest one I would say is The Shallows is pretty dope.
Okay,
but
is
other
that the
than
one
that,
with Blake Lively?
yes.
Okay,
but it's still nowhere close to Jaws. But it's a fun movie if you like.
I saw The Meg a few summers ago. It was fine, but it's like one of those movies where it's like it just never captures this magic, because the best stuff in here is not even the shark stuff. It's the relationships. It's the dread. It's the fact that the main character doesn't like water, and then he's on a boat for the whole end of the movie, and he ends the movie swimming through the water. Like it's just amazing how all these arcs get fulfilled. Yeah,
his arc, he comes, he doesn't know what he's doing. He feels like an outsider.
It must be in the backyard.
In Amity, you say yad.
He lets himself get run over by the mayor, basically. He isn't making his own decisions. He gets on this boat, Quint's making all the decisions, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He keeps fucking up. He almost blows up the boat with that tank that comes loose. And he's just doing all this. There's one part where he's doing something with the rope, and he ends up almost like cutting Richard Dreyfuss's legs off with the rope.
It's like between the rope and the boat. It's like the 127 hours. It's like, oh
my god.
Not to that extent, but
talk about a horror movie.
Right. Yeah, but it's just so interesting. It's really interesting to see all these characters coming together, and just the way they set it up too with him. You mentioned Dan's video. He went into this a little bit, but the fact that when the phone rings, he looks in the wrong place because he's not used to the new house yet. He doesn't know why the sun is setting differently now. It's because it's a different time of year. He's just not accustomed to his surroundings. And as someone who has grown up by the Jersey Shore my whole life, I know the beach environment, but like I think about people who are visitors who only get to go to like the beach a few times a year, or not even every year, and how that is such a big goal. Like, we got to get everyone in the water. This is their vacation time. This is their we need the tourism. And it becomes almost political that way, in the fact that we need the business, we need the money. But he's like, no, he's thinking logistically. He's like, we can't. Like, there's a shark in the water, and the mayor's like, well, we need the profits, and we need to clean this beach up and get people out there. Oh, we got the shark, fine.
But what kind? What kind of shark?
It's a tiger shark.
A what?
A tiger shark. It's done. It's good. It's very interesting to see how that element plays into it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of. Sorry,
no, go ahead.
There's so many kind of like antagonists in the slate of movies that are just so like real, because you've seen people that are like this, and this mayor is exactly like a politician who's like, no, climate change isn't real, because it if it was real and I admitted it was real, then it would go against everything that I want to accomplish, and it would probably lose us money and all this stuff. So they just basically like downplay. There's a lot of people who wanted to downplay the whole COVID thing. And it's like,
Perfect perfect
Yeah, the
example.
mayor is that guy where, you kind of feel for him a little bit when he suddenly realizes that he fucked up. And he's like, my family's here too. So you realize he just really didn't understand, but that's still dangerous too because he has so much power. It's like, yeah, I understand you were ignorant, you didn't understand, but you have all this power. You should like dot the I's and cross the T's, bro.
Yeah, it's funny how like the two things that are coming at you is a mayor and a literal great white shark, and then everyone just assumes that the mayor should be the one they pay attention to, rather than this other evil that is gonna literally chomp you and eat you. But
you have that one part though, just since we're still talking about the mayor, when like no one's going in and he's like huffing and puffing, like no one's going in the water. There's nothing out there. We caught the shark, and then he goes up to the one like older guy, and then you're like, please do me a favor, go get in the water. There's nothing out there. You're going to go have a great time in the water. And then the guy reluctantly is like, come on, family, let's go. And then you're like, oh my God, he's sending this guy to his death right now.
It's almost like the question of who's the biggest villain. Is it the shark or is it the mayor?
The mayor.
Or both. Like it really is an important question because it shows how much influence people in power can have on the community to get their way when they're not putting everyone else's good thoughts into mind. I mean, you brought up the COVID thing, and I mean, that makes such perfect sense. Like, it's a perfect parallel. Yeah, and I think that makes it even more impactful nowadays.
Don't wear masks. Come on now. What are you afraid of? A boogeyman?
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Like, getting in the water is wearing a mask, or staying on land is wearing a mask. Perfect allegory. I mean, you should do a whole video deep dive on that. That would be interesting, Chad. Just like the parallels between Jaws and COVID. No, really, it's a good idea. Or make a shark movie about COVID and make the shark symbolic of COVID. And make Jaws Flu, The Revenge. I don't know. That's a bad name for it.
Where you son of a...
Yeah, I mean, just so much good dialogue. Again, it's so quotable. Yeah. Here's my laptop, right up there. You're gonna need a bigger boat. It's there.
You're gonna need a bigger boat, not we're gonna.
That's right. The sticker don't lie. So speaking of a bigger boat, we're gonna need a bigger boat for all these awards because Jaws won 3 out of its 4 awards it was nominated for. It was only nominated for 4, but it took away 3 of them. So that's a 750 batting average right there. It was nominated for Best Picture, but it won all the other awards it was up for. It won Original Score for John Williams because duh. It won Best Sound and Best Film Editing, which is really great. I mean, again, the editing between the shark under the water and over the water and all the different beach scenes, and then the stuff on the boat, making this small boat have so many different dimensions and layers. I mean, the editing is so important. It didn't get nominated for cinematography, but I do think that is almost kind of what the editing, like the editing and cinematography, I guess, that award for editing kind of encompasses the shots as well and more of how they were put together rather than the actual framing itself.
Maybe I think the only thing about the cinematography that I would note is that the way like the water looks like so crisp in some of the shots and stuff like that. So there's definitely some brilliance there, but maybe just not enough throughout the whole film to have nominated it. Or
no, I agree. I think it should have been nominated for sure, but I'm assuming maybe the editing win was like a thumbs up to the entire like actual aesthetic of the film itself. I don't know.
Makes sense.
Alas, so let's just get back on land. Let's get out of the water. Let's go back on land and let's go catch a concert.
Where are we going?
Opry. Let's go to Nashville. Why not? Chad, tell us about Nashville. Come on down.
All right, come on down. All right, Nashville, directed by Robert Altman, written by Joan Tewksbury, cinematography by Paul Lohman, music by Richard Baskin, starring David Arkin, Barbara Baxley, Ned Beatty, Karen Black, Ronnie Blackley, Timothy Brown, Keith Carradine, Geraldine Chaplin, Robert Doquey, the great Shelley Duvall, Alan Garfield, Henry Gibson, Scott Glenn, Jeff Goldblum. That's Jeff Goldblum? Yeah. Barbara Harris, David Hayward, Michael Murphy, Alan F. Nichols, David Peel, a.k.a. the guy who looks like Jesse Plemons, Christina Rains, Lily Tomlin, and Gwen Wells.
Yeah, there you go.
Synopsis. It's about Nashville and country singers in Nashville, and there's some that are really popular. There's some that are bad, and they want to be really great country singers, but they're bad. And there's a plot, and there's like this like really crazy guy.
Yeah.
That's a plot. There's politics too.
Yeah, I know. It's a big question mark in terms of like what is the singular plot, and we see so many of these movies nowadays, like the Gary Marshall ones, like Valentine's Day and like New Year's Eve, and all those movies where it's like 30 different characters. Love Actually is a good one. Like all these characters, different storylines going on at once. I think this movie actually probably does a better job connecting it all than those do, because those ones are all just like snippet, and maybe they're all there together at the end. But this one, it's like, oh, he's involved with her, who's also involved with him, who's also involved with her, who's also involved with him, and then this guy that you saw earlier is also with this guy in this place, and then there's also this conversation that with them, and then she ends up being in an affair with him and her. It's a lot of crossing and different relationships. It's a lot. It's a spider web. It really is. And that's what's so interesting, is because it feels, I did say Barry Lyndon almost felt like a documentary at times because it was so authentic aesthetically, but this feels most like a documentary in the terms of like the storytelling, because it's really not one consistent plot. It's more of the events and the people within these different events and in the time period and the town itself. It almost feels like just someone let a camera roam around this town, and here's the different things we picked up from different areas.
Absolutely, yeah. Like Nashville, just like you said, like you kind of compared a little bit to Barry Lyndon. They're both really long, but they're both also like authentic, and they're like, trying to be the most authentic they can be. And it's, got great country music. I'm not a huge country music fan, but I still love the performances and the country in this movie. I thought they did a great job with all the songs. I even enjoyed listening to the lady that wasn't good. I enjoyed listening to her sing. I was like, this is okay. It's kind of off key, but like, she's trying.
And what's interesting about this film is that most of the actors and actresses actually composed the songs that they performed. They actually wrote the songs that they performed. So you have Blakely, the one who plays Barbara Jean, the one that everyone, essentially the main character, like she's the one that this whole concert's centered around, who's the one who ends up, spoiler, getting shot at the end, presumably killed. But she's the one she wrote the song Bluebird. She wrote Tape Deck in His Tractor, My Idaho Home. She wrote all those. Karen Black, the woman who played the one who stepped in for the concert while she was sick, wrote the song Memphis and Rolling Stone. Carradine wrote the song I'm Easy, which won the Academy Award for Best Song, the one that he sings while Lily Tomlin looks at him. Like that song just gives me chills.
Yeah, I'm easy. Say you want me, I'll come running without taking time to think, because I'm easy.
Oh yeah,
that song too. It's really interesting to see how these actors wrote the music. They didn't just perform it, they wrote it, and it makes it feel, like you said, so authentic and so real, and almost like this slice of life of all these different lives. You have like 24 lives or whatever at once.
You know what you just kind of reminded me of a little bit that Nashville did before but does perfectly, and this other movie does perfectly, Inside Llewyn Davis with Oscar Isaac.
I've never actually seen it, but I've seen it.
There's like a great performance by him where in the very beginning he performs this great like folk song, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Why doesn't Oscar Isaac just like perform music?
Right.
And like that, all these performances in this movie are just like so good, and like some of them are kind of long, like the one, the My Idaho Home or whatever. That one was really great, and that kind of ended her, because she gets like shot right after that, and but then you have like some of these parts that where she's a great singer, but she's like terrible at like everything else with performing. Like, she tries to kind of wing it and like get the crowd fired up and talk to the crowd. How some, bands do, they'll banter a little bit, and some of them are great at it. And she goes on this crazy tangent, and even her manager has to come down and go, we're going to take a little bit of a break. She's not feeling well.
Yeah, and this reminds me of like when we were talking earlier with even Dog Day Afternoon and Barry Lyndon a little bit, like how much of it is like comedy versus drama, because there are some funny moments in this film.
Yes.
Like, one of my favorite parts is when like she's whose character? It's Barbara Harris's character singing out there, and the racetrack is going, the cars, and you
singing,
and she's like rocking out, and you don't hear her. Of course, you hear her at the very end because she's the one who closes out the movie. But then you also have the scene where Barbara Jean's sick, and they're going to bring out Connie as the singing act, and they said, well, Barbara Jean's sick, but we do have another famous musical artist in the crowd who's going to sing for us. And you see what's his name start to stand up, the other country singer, the guy who's got a big ego, the guy in the beginning who's in the recording studio.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, Haven Hamilton.
He's the grandpa in Luck of the Irish.
Yes, yes. But you see Haven Hamilton, Henry Gibson's character, like kind of start to stand up, and they say, Connie White, and then he kind of like sits down again. And he's like, okay, he takes a sip of his drink. Like, I love those moments.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are moments like with Barbara Jean, especially the ending, where it's like she's going off of these tangents, but you kind of laugh, but you're also kind of like feel for her because she is in a weird emotional distressed point in her life. Maybe it's this mental illness. Maybe she is, overwhelmed and over consumed by all these things going on in her life, that she has these like nervous breakdowns and stuff. Because everyone's saying like, oh, she's emotionally fragile. She's going to have another outburst. She's going to like break down again. Like, and it's interesting to see how they navigate that, because every single character in this could not be more different. Like, they're all so interesting individual personalities, and they cover really a lot of ground in terms of plot, but also just character types and different types of people in Nashville. And it really makes up this really authentic vision of what Nashville was at the time. And again, the whole politics, so much politics in this too. Yeah,
there's just like so many shots in between everything else that's just like of this political van that just keeps going around talking about like the government does this and you need to do this. And so it's got a lot of like little political messages too, weaving in. Like, I kind of want to rewatch it and just kind of like write down all the political messages and try to be like, all right, what are they saying here? Yeah. And I feel like that was really a thing for me with this movie. It's like the first watch, I had to go like, what are they doing here? Like, I couldn't even like wrap my head around like what to follow, because I there was no like true central figure to like note, because they kept jumping around so much, and they had like the traffic jam and stuff like that. I didn't rewatch the whole movie, but I rewatched some of it just to kind of put it into more context and go, okay, now I can kind of see the pattern.
Right, I agree with you. Yeah,
it's like how some albums you might have to listen to twice before you go, okay, now I see the pattern.
Right.
Sorry,
yeah, I wasn't sure. No, it's fine. I wasn't sure, like you, like what exactly the story was, like what the central story was. And then once they all started, like they got at the second concert or whatever, and they were performing, I was like, oh, this is just literally a bunch of country stars at this concert, and they're all just connected in some way. Like, there really wasn't a central story, but at the same time, it made it harder to follow because of it. And then the second half is when it all kind of started to piece together a little bit more for me, like how there was that trio and she was sleeping with the other band member who was also in love with Lily Tomlin. Like, it's all started to piece itself together. But I agree with you. I'd like to go back and watch it again now to see how all of it connects and exactly what I should be following when and who the real big characters are. Because Shelley Duvall's friend, the guy who ended up killing Barbara Jean.
Yeah, he's like a guy that rents a room with them.
Right, yeah. I wouldn't even say her friend, but like the person she's with for the majority of the film, like he was someone that was kind of like a throwaway character for me. Kenny, the loner with the violin case. I was like, oh yeah, he's just a throwaway.
He's
character.
A musician.
Then he ends up being the one who kills her, and it's like, wait, so he was a bigger character. And then Ned Beatty, who like is obviously amazing. I thought he was going to be a bigger part, and he is a big part, but he's not like one of the leads. Like, he's not the center of all the action, but because he's the bigger name, and Shelley Duvall too, like I was paying more attention to them. Like, I really want to now go back knowing who exactly I should be paying attention to the most and who I should be looking at the most, because it was a little confusing at first just to kind of settle into the vibe and what it was going for sure.
I think it's like way better upon rewatch, and like this, like the way you were talking about it, almost like it's like a puzzle coming together. It's like, it kind of reminds me of a really early album, Trout Mask Replica. And what this album does is it has all the different instruments are playing their own thing, their own little thing. It doesn't even sound like they're in the same room together, like they're not even listening to the other instruments. And so they're kind of just on their own little wavelength doing their own little thing. And that's kind of like what these characters are doing. Like, they're doing their own thing, and then they slowly come together later. And I feel like that's kind of like this movie. And it does kind of come together at the end. Exactly. But I feel like this movie just has a lot of great style. It has a lot of great performances. It has Jeff Goldblum just doing magic tricks with his like hat. And he's riding this Easy Rider kind of motorcycle. And stuff like that. So I love like little touches like that. Like his character's not really, he doesn't really do much in the story, but it kind of gets.
I think some of the lengthiness and the actual like I don't want to say like slogginess again, but like the length and the, you know, the impatience sometimes comes from the fact that these are full songs sung to their length, and like there's a lot of songs in it that aren't necessarily like choreographed. It's just them singing it, and it's just the other characters sitting and watching them, and that's where I think of it as more. It feels like a documentary at times, and again, Robert Altman. A lot of his films, he has the blueprint of the script, but he kind of lets the actors kind of just improv. And I think that's another reason why some of it's very effective, but also some of it just seems like, okay, this is really kind of a nothing conversation. But to the characters in the moment, I mean, people have nothing conversations all the time. You know,
It's kind of like a slice of life. I
right.
like
If you
that.
go to a film or not film festival, if you go to a film festival or a country music festival like this, like you're just gonna have people sitting around talking, and that's just what the life is like. And they made a good point. Some of the critics I read reviews on was like, you know, in normal life, you don't just have your 3 or 4 friends, you have like 20 people you're connected to, and they're not always in the same circle. So when you see a character fooling around with these people, but also buddying it up with these people and talking to these people, they don't necessarily all have to be in the same story, because no one's friends are all in the same story. The only time all your friends are in the same place at the same time is like your wedding or your funeral. Like every time else, it's like you're in other groups with different people
Right.
at different times at different stages of your life. So that made sense to me. Like how you're not always going to see the same central storylines, and so many characters are going to break off into other timelines. And I feel like I'm talking about a Marvel movie right now, but like different timelines and stuff, just because they're
The
different
end
connections.
game of country music, Nashville.
Right.
Yeah, that's perfect, man. I actually didn't really think of it like that, but now, like, this movie, like when I first watched it, I was like, oh, "What is this? This is kind of
Right.
boring."
Yeah.
And then the second watch, I'm slowly like, "Okay, I'm piecing this all together." And now that I hear you saying that, I'm like, "That's a good." I really want to rewatch this just to like keep what Dill said in mind. And there's a lot of other little touches that I liked, like the one character that I keep talking about, I keep referring to, that I really liked was the lady that just, she sees what Barbara Jean, and she wants to be that. She wants to be that big country singer. You see that Barbara Jean has her own problems, but she's got this great voice and she uses it, and everyone loves her. And they got people waiting in the airport the building just to see her, and they got to hold the mobs from coming at her.
Yeah,
and like
I looked up her name, Suleen. That's
okay, yeah. And this one girl, she just wants to do the same thing, but unfortunately, she hasn't. I mean, I don't know if like everyone can be trained to sing, but she has clearly not been trained at all.
Yeah.
And she's just like, you know, I wrote this song, like it can only be you. And you know, so she's like, you know, I'm gonna go just do my thing and perform without any training. She's like every person who's on American Idol, and you know, so she goes out and she just tries it, and people are like, oh God, look at this. And then like they end up, I feel like, didn't they end up like having her go like, you know, why don't you strip for us or something?
Yeah, they made her
like,
do a striptease. And that's where that's where the drama kind of comes in too, because it's like it's funny for a little while, and then you see her as she takes every article of clothing off, start to almost kind of in her face, you can kind of see her, you know,
her dreams are dying.
Exactly. And that's what's crazy about Nashville is like, you know, it's this like happy,
this
like
is all
everyone's
you're
happy
good
here.
for.
Right, but then like you look at some of these characters deeper, and it's like they are going through tough times, like Barbara Jean, and then this character Suleen. Like it's really interesting, and then seeing how everything else around them kind of crumbles as well. But also the comedy, like it's a good balance, I think. And Robert Altman's is great.
You have the one lady who has the affair with the country guy, and she has the deaf children. So you have some good representation of disabilities in there, and she has like a whole conversation with these kids, and then like, you know, you kind of realize that like her husband doesn't have the same kind of attention, and he's focused over here and stuff like that, so it kind of strays. So, you know, I guess that's kind of what I took from it. So
it's a very interesting film.
Things.
Yeah. So, Nashville, again, I said it won Best Original Song, but that was it. It didn't win anything else. It was nominated for Picture, Director for Robert Altman, Supporting Actress for both Renee Blakely and Lily Tomlin, the one you just mentioned, the one with the deaf children.
Yeah. What was the song, by the way?
It was I'm Easy. It's the one that Tom sings to
like that
Lily
one.
Tomlin.
It was,
he's like, there's someone in the crowd, and that's another great moment, too, because there's like 4 or 5 girls that think that he's singing it to her. You know, and each one thinks it's to them, and it ends up being about Lily Tomlin. But even then, we see that relationship doesn't even go the full mile because, you know, again, like real life, sometimes you do have just one night stands that you think are more, and then it happens and it's over and that's it. And that's just how this works. Some relationships in this film don't stay. They're just like small little pairings that go throughout. But
What was the song called again?
I'm Easy.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess he was. So
That's funny. Well, you know what's not easy? Escaping from Nurse Ratchet's hellish psychological prison.
She who must not be named.
Oh man. Anyway, that was our segue to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's the last segue of the day, probably for good reason.
Right.
Chad, tell us about the inspiration behind the Netflix series Ratchet, aka the original One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, directed by Milos Forman, written by Lawrence Halbin and Bo Goldsman, cinematography by Haskell Wexler and Bill Butler, music by Jack Nietzsche, starring Jack Nicholson, Louise Fletcher, Will Sampson, William Redfield, Brad Dourif, Chucky, Sidney Lassick, Christopher Lloyd, Danny DeVito, Dean Brooks, William Duell, Vincent Schiavelli, Michael Berryman, Nathan George, Maria Small, Scatman Crothers, Phil Roth, and Louisa Mortiz. I know you enjoy that.
I love your name pronunciation. It's great. Also because I get giddy because this is a fucking stacked cast. Like I love this cast. I love this cast so much. It's so good.
Yes.
Keep going.
This cast is so good. The synopsis is basically the reason why it's such a great cast. It's like they're all in this confined space too for a lot of the movie, because the film takes place in a mental institution.
Yeah.
That's the best word for it, right?
I said prison because it feels like a prison. But,
it's kind of a prison, even though we find out that most of them can leave at any time, apparently, or can they? Basically, Jack Nicholson's character, McMurphy, he shows up to the mental institution because it's found out that he he didn't rape a 15-year-old girl, did he? Or did he just...
It's statutory rape, which is basically... so even if it's consent, the age, she was too young to consent anyway. So it could have been non-consensual, and then it's just rape, but also it's statutory rape because of her age. So
because he's in his 30s or something like that. So,
Jack Nicholson, I never know how old he actually is because he always looks older than he is or younger than he is. I don't know.
Yeah. So he's basically convicted of this. So he's forced to be there because. Actually he goes to prison first, and then he's transferred to here. I forget what they said he did to get transferred, but he's there. So but he doesn't really seem crazy. It's just he did this thing. So I mean, immediately, and the way he talks about it too, in kind of a vulgar way, you're kind of ooh, with this character, I don't know. Yeah. But you slowly start to, at least I did, love this character. Because, he takes this institution and he sees all these people who are hurting because this nurse is so overbearing, kind of evil and manipulative. And exactly. And she does it all, with not a smile, but with a soft voice.
Right.
And
it's never full on yelling or anything malicious until the end, but it's very soft. It's very passive aggressive. I mean, it is the definition of, you're very passive, but also aggressive.
Do you think it might be possible to turn that music down so maybe a couple of the boys could talk?
Your hand is staining my window.
Yeah. And so he basically takes all these people, he gets to know them, and then he slowly starts to basically make them feel good about themselves, build them up, make them feel like they can actually speak for themselves, make decisions, do things. They don't have to be these weird shells of people just living or are they living kind of a deal. Just you
it's almost
can
he's starting an uprising and a rebellion. Almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You can be better and you can do this yourself. You can work together to accomplish things, and you can, and one of the best moments is when he's trying to lift this water thing. And he can't fucking do it. He tries so hard, he's going to burst a vessel in his head probably. But at the end, he goes, at least I tried, And that's kind of one of the big things for this movie. And it, for me, makes it such a great film as he inspires so many people. And our first winner was The Shawshank Redemption, and the reason why I love that movie is because it's so inspirational. It's this guy who comes in and he's like, here's a bunch of hopeless cases. They're in prison for God knows how long, and here comes a guy who's like, kind of has it figured out a little more, and he's like, get busy living or get busy dying, kind of a deal. And he inspires these people, and this is what happens with this movie years and decades before. And I just think everything with this movie is just so great. One thing I just really want to note, and I'll let you talk because I've been talking forever.
Okay. I like hearing you rave about a film you love. I mean, that's why that's why this episode's so great, because it's 5 films that we clearly like a lot. So
great films. I just love what Milos Forman did with this, because like it opens and closes almost like on the same kind of shot. And I just love stuff like that. Spider-Man 2 does something similar, I feel like. And it just stuff like that, just like, I don't know. I just love it, especially if it's not cheap and it like works. So
yeah, I like this film a lot. I think to answer your question of like, why is he here instead of his regular prison? I think to an extent, maybe he felt like, oh, that's going to be a lot easier. Let me make everyone think I'm crazy and get sent there, because he obviously is a little manipulative himself. And I think it's one of those interesting case scenarios like Dog Day Afternoon, like Barry Lyndon, where they're doing bad things, but at the same time we find them endearing and we root for them to an extent. Like it's the same thing with Al Pacino. He's robbing a bank, we like him anyway. Here, there's a guy who is literally in jail for rape, and we like him anyway because of how he approaches the actual system, and it takes down the system. It's almost like picking the lesser of two evils. He's obviously bad in a way, but what he's doing is for the greater good for so many other people that, Nurse Ratched then becomes the greater of two evils in a sense. That's the way I look at it, because he does change these lives for these guys. But then it almost feels like for nothing by the end, because it is such a somber ending, because he really doesn't get that victory. Because, Billy dies. He ends up going back to the main reason he was there, because he attempted suicide, and then he ends up succumbing to that. And then he gets the lobotomy, and he's basically a potato. And then Nurse Ratched keeps her job. So everything he wanted to accomplish, he didn't really do that, because everything ends up back where it started, except of course for the chief, who ends up making the great escape. So that's why it does have a somber note at the end. But I do think I like the journey a lot, of like seeing these characters grow even for that short period of time, even though it doesn't necessarily resolve for everyone the same way in a successful, satisfying way. It's great to see that journey and see the changes he makes.
Jesus, I mean, you guys do nothing but complain about how you can't stand it in this place here, and then you haven't got the guts just to walk out.
This character I grew to really love, because I've seen this movie before a long time ago, but like watching it again, I'm like, holy shit, this is like a great movie. Like, seeing him make such a difference in these people's lives, and just these big moments, they're not big moments like in some huge set piece movie, but it's like this big moment, him trying to move this thing. He can't, but he's like, I tried, you told me I couldn't, but hey, at least I gave it an effort, and like you said, he comes and he's kind of a not great guy, but then you see him come against like the bigger force of this lady who
the lesser of two evils
out has been harming these people. And I love how this movie also, I love and hate how this movie represents how we used to treat people with mental handicaps.
Exactly.
Like lobotomies, that's such a barbaric thing to do to somebody. Like, how would you even think that would fix somebody? Ends up taking this guy who's so energetic, just like Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon. He's so energetic and charismatic and just like inspiring people. Like, don't you want to see the World Series? This is like aren't you an American? Don't you want to do this? Like, speak up for yourself. Raise your hand. We don't want to work. We can change up the schedule one time. We can just watch the World Series, and you see this fucking bitch who just like, she sees this passion of this guy. She doesn't care. And all she wants is to enforce these rules because she's right. All these people are under her command, and they shouldn't be hopeful, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting scenes is when she is giving the medication, and he basically says like, oh, I don't want to take this. And she's like, well, you can take it the other way. And it's almost like she's threatening him. But like we said earlier, it's never this like well, I'm gonna do this to you, ha ha ha. It's never the I'll get you, your little dog too, like Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Spoiler alert, that's next month, but like it's not like that. It's a very calm demeanor, and that almost makes Nurse Ratched a more polarizing villain. Because the thing is, the first time I watched this, I was like, why did she win an award for this? Because she really isn't a flashy performance, and I think it's because Jack Nicholson is doing so much in this film, like in terms of like just emotions and the way he carries himself, and the loudness of his voice and the range of his voice and the performance, that when you have Louise Fletcher who's doing something so subtle and subdued, it's a weird dichotomy. And at first it doesn't stand out, but rewatching it, I'm like, wow, this girl really tapped into that whole stone cold bitch nature. And the whole thing is she puts the stone cold in it because she's just cold. She never lets it show because she's intimidated. It's very clear from the start that she's like, this is going to be a problem, because he thinks it's going to be much easier for me in this mental institution than in regular prison. He's like, I want to get out, so my way out is to go to this mental institution. But he almost realizes that when he gets there, it's even worse than regular prison in a sense, because there is this strict person who just has their eye on everything and who can essentially ruin your life, and she literally does with the lobotomy. But even before then, just like the different restrictions, it's almost like, oh, I'll take the easy class, even though when I'm an honor student, I'll take the kindergarten level class, but then everyone treats me like I'm a baby. And it's like, no, but I'm smarter than that. Well, it's like, well, you should have just stuck with the regular, honors class. And it's not the same thing, but it's a similar predicament where it's like, he probably questioned whether or not he should have come here in the first place, because, it is a very different atmosphere. It's a very hellish atmosphere for him. And it's a really interesting relationship, the two of them, that they have. And when he finally gets that last moment where he chokes her, it's like, normally it'd be like, why would you ever do that to someone of authority as like a doctor in a literal hospital? Why would you attack a doctor? Like, that's a criminal offense. But at the same time, you see all the things she's done, and it's a really great commentary on institutions and how we should treat patients, and vice versa. When it comes a point where the patient should speak up about something. In this case, he really acted out, but like really when you should be willing to fight for your rights and make a statement. And I think it's just really interesting. All these different characters. It's such a colorful ensemble. Like I said, this is the first film ever where we see Christopher Lloyd act, and the first film that gives us Brad Dourif. And those are two actors who have gone on to do a multitude of things. Christopher Lloyd still acting. He was just in Nobody. I mean, Brad Dourif went on to do Lord of the Rings. He went on to do Mississippi Burning. He went on to do Chucky. Brad Dourif. He's had such an amazing career.
Mississippi Burning, dude. Jesus.
Yeah, I know. But, those performances are just so good from first timers. Danny DeVito, this was one of his first roles.
Yeah.
He is utterly amazing as Martini.
The wife did not even believe that was. I was like, no, that's definitely Danny, the short guy, Danny DeVito.
They all look so young. What? Yeah. So that ensemble just really makes up such a great cast of characters. Sidney Lassick also as Chadwick is amazing too, because he's so innocent, and again it's tough because you have Randall McMurphy, who is very clearly someone who knows what's up and is fighting against this because he knows it's wrong. But then you have people like Chadwick who really don't understand at first. They're kind of a lost puppy dog, and then at the end when he finally gets with it and he finally tells Nurse Ratched off, you're like, yes, go. You're finally getting with the program. Yeah,
absolutely. Like when because he's McMurphy's trying to inspire these people and stuff. And this guy, like when he finally breaks out, I love that part too, because he's just like, I want my cigarettes, and you're just like, yeah, you do. You definitely do. When you're going through the cast, I was like, oh yeah. The one time I went, kind of did like a little mental joke where I was like, they finally did commit Doc Brown.
Yes. There you go. Just before they went back from the future to the future to admit Doc Brown. But yeah, just a legendary cast. It's a really great story. I mean, it gave us, like I said, the Netflix show that just came out, Ratched. I haven't seen it yet because
check that out. It's got Sarah Paulson in it.
I watched the trailer and it made it seem more of like your classic movie villain. And I think the thing with this that I like so much is how plain and simple she is at first glance, how she really is. It's all her words. It's never, she's not coming at anyone with a knife. She's not, setting a bomb on someone. She's not like screaming or yelling at someone until the end, but like, it's almost scarier that she doesn't. It's almost, more haunting that way, that it's all just her words and her demeanor. And that's what makes her so frightening. So yeah, I don't know if I'll watch that Netflix show because I like how this character is so much that I'm worried they'll try too much to make her like this like super villain type person. But again, it's not necessarily the same story is this anyway? It's its own thing. So maybe I'll check it out. But just such an iconic character. It's like sometimes you don't have to change perfection. But, any last thoughts, though, about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? I mean, we've talked about all the things we love. Is there anything you don't love about
it? I'll wait because we might bring it up a little later.
Okay. The only thing that drags it down for me a little bit is that actual boating trip. It's a little bit lengthy, like the actual scene itself. Like I think it's a nice break away from the normal pace of the film, but I think the film is strongest when they're in the institution with Nurse Ratched and McMurphy's. They're kind of butting of heads. Whereas like when they escape, it's like a nice moment, but also like, I want to get back to this dynamic. But, it's a very small nitpick. It's a great film. Milos Forman is exceptional.
Right.
I mean, I'm looking at these films. I mean, you got Stanley Kubrick, Spielberg, Sidney Lumet, Robert Altman, and then Milos Forman. It's like literally these could be considered 5. This could be a Mount Rushmore, 4 of these 5.
Yeah.
And Spielberg wasn't even nominated for Jaws because he was still an up and comer. Like the fact that you have this crop of directors and the only one who doesn't get nominated is Spielberg is pretty freaking amazing. I mean, this is great. And we'll get to it eventually with Amadeus. I mean, Milos Forman he wasn't just a one-trick pony. He gave us 2 amazing Best Picture winners. So I think it's maybe not my most well-deserved Best Picture winner, but I think it is a well-deserved Best Picture winner. I think it is definitely worthy because it's a great film.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as I said, it won Best Picture. We all knew that. It swept. It won Best Picture, Director for Milos Forman, Actor for Jack Nicholson, Actress for Louise Fletcher, and Adapted Screenplay. That was the big 5. It was also nominated for Original Score, Cinematography, Editing, and then, of course, Brad Dourif in his first role was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which I'm very happy about.
Nice.
He is just so good. I mean, his moments, it's just such a heartbreaking performance. It really is.
Yeah.
Just a heartbreaking movie and a heartbreaking performance that is just legendary. I mean, the performances in this are truly legendary. So, Chad, now we got to do the hard task of ranking these 5 amazing films. Usually it's easy to say, oh, this is on the bottom, this is on the top, and I'll fill in the middle. But here it's very tough. Like every single spot I have.
It is pretty tough. I have my top 2 where I'm like, those I know I've made a decision, but I'm like, they could be reversed, to be honest. The top 2 are just...
So of course, we have awarded the prize commonly to Shawshank Redemption, to Nomadland, to Double Indemnity, and then to last month we awarded it to Moneyball.
It was Moneyball, yep.
Yeah, and so now this is our 5th. I believe it's our 5th, right? We've only done 5.
I think so.
Sure. Yeah, this is our 5th. If not, there's another film that we awarded it to too. So this will join the long list. So let's rank and find out exactly who is going to come out on top. Do you want to start or do you want me to start, Chad?
I don't know. I'll start. My 5 is Nashville.
My 5 is also Nashville.
Okay. My 4 is Barry Lyndon.
My 4 is Barry Lyndon. Okay. We're on par.
My 3 is Dog Day Afternoon.
My 3 is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay. All right. That's what I kind of figured.
Okay.
My 2 is Jaws.
Okay. Which means my number 2 is Dog Day Afternoon.
Okay. All right. So my 1 is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. My number 1 is, of course, Jaws. Just one of those films where, people ask me what my favorite horror movie is. That's what I say. I mean, it's like one of my favorite movies. Rewatching it now, I loved it just as much. I still don't know if it's this or E.T. is my favorite of his works, but it's up there. Dog Day Afternoon, I just love so much. Every time I watch it, it gets better and better. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is also just solid. That's my number 3. It's so good. It just happens to be that I would prefer to watch the other 2 more. Barry Lyndon's a little long, but I loved it. The craft is beautiful. And then Nashville is one that I just think I need another watch to put it anywhere above those 4 other masterpieces. Same. But I really think that is how my ranking came about. How about you?
Yeah, so Nashville was kind of the same thing where I felt it needed more than one watch, but I feel like, it's such a great one. This could have easily won Best Picture. It's just that kind of year. And then Barry Lyndon, it's one of the best movies ever made. It's just, some of the pacing, but I mean, you may like that. I don't know. Right. This could also have won Best Picture. Yeah. Dog Day Afternoon, I feel like I need some more watches with that one. I feel like it's great, but it's just the top 2 for me. I'm like are almost perfect. Yeah. And for Jaws, that was my easy number 1 until I rewatched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and then fair. I was like, Jaws is like almost a perfect movie. I'm like, it could be a perfect movie, but then I'm sitting there like, It's perfect because it's shot such a way. It's like one of the best movies ever made. Blockbuster. The shark's creepy. It's one of the greatest horror films ever made. So it should be like right up my alley, and it is. It almost won #1. But the thing for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that sold it for me, I just think like everything works in it, and it just has something to say. And when I think about like us talking about like the mayor and like having great points about that, like political points and stuff like that. Yeah, it also does have something to say, but I think the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest has a lot of like deeper things to say, and it's a deeper movie for me. So I'm like, shit. Just the part where you have him trying to lift that water thing, and at the end, Chief does because he influenced him to do this. So he, like you said, he manipulates people, but in a good way. Like he shows people how to be better. And I feel like, I'm the one who picked Shawshank #1 too, and you put that third, I believe. So like that's my type of movie. I just love when people inspire other people to be better than themselves, but it just so happens like it's up against Jaws, so that was a very tough. But it just for me, it just kind of like
it's such a stacked lineup that no matter, even if you would put Barry Lyndon or Nashville or Dog Day in one, it would have been warranted. Like these are some great films. I mean, I believe Nashville, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Jaws are all on the AFI Top 100. And I honestly think, when I look back, I think Nashville might be higher than the other two. I'm not sure, though. And then Barry Lyndon, I mean, it's Kubrick. Kubrick is one of the best directors of all time. And then Dog Day Afternoon also. Like, it's in our top 3. Like, it's a sleeper there, but it's a great film. Like, these are all great films. So I don't blame us either way. But the way the math runs out is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is 1 for you and 3 for me there. So that's a 4 in total. Dog Day is 3 for you, 2 for me, which is a 5 in total. And then Jaws is 2 for you and 1 for me, which is a 3 total, which means the lowest score happens to be Jaws. So Jaws is our best picture winner.
And honestly, even if it worked out that we had to do like a coin flip, I was just going to give you Jaws because for me, I just wanted to say that my favorite was One Flew. And I was like, we can make Jaws the best one because I think it may be the best movie, but One Flew is just my favorite. So
we're ranking it based on our personal taste, and that's what it should be.
So I'm perfectly happy to have Jaws at #1.
Our picture this winner for 1975 is Jaws. It's Jaws. I had to do it.
Jaws.
Now we'll get into the actor and actress conversation because oh boy, these actors were stacked. I am going first.
Not as much the actresses, but
I mean it's a very male-dominated slate, and I think that's one thing that works against these movies. But again, like it's just the type of stories you're telling. I mean, that's just how it works out. But we still have some great female performances. But male performances, I mean, you have a few from Barry Lyndon that are great, a few from Nashville that are great. You've got 3 central performances in Jaws that are amazing. You've got all those, mental hospital patients in Cuckoo's Nest. And then you've also got the great dynamic duo of bank robbers in Dog Day Afternoon. So I was really toying around with it. And I was really debating it and just going back and forth in my mind. But of all these performances, there are 2 actors on between, and one of those actors, this is one of their best performances, but there are other performances of his that I like better than this one, whereas the other actor, I've never seen them at this level. So you might bring up the other one, but the one I am going to stick for my best actor, I'm going to stick it in as my best actor pick. I'm locking it in. Al Pacino from Dog Day Afternoon.
Okay.
So I was toying around with that and Jack Nicholson, but I was like, you know what? There are other Jack Nicholson performances like The Shining, like Chinatown, that I might just like more than this one, even though this is amongst like his top few performances. Whereas Al Pacino, I think this is better than any other performance Al Pacino's ever given, and that's even including The Godfather, which I love. But this is my favorite Al Pacino performance by far, and I think that's why I chose it as my performance. I think it's just such an amazing performance. And again, that Attica moment is so good because it shows his highs, but then also the lows when he's on the conversations on the phone, like I said, are just so good. And that last moment where he's in the car and then he gets his handcuffs and he's just watching Sal get taken away, that to me, without words, is some of the best acting I've seen him do, just because he's so manic and up here the whole time, that just to see him at the car, his hands behind his back, just watching and just seeing Sal get taken away and just see his face. I mean, that is just powerful.
Okay, safe.
It's just a beautiful performance, and I loved so many other performances, but like again, there are other actors here that are amazing that I've seen do other amazing things. I've never seen Al Pacino act like this.
Yeah.
I love him as Michael Corleone, but again, this has got to be my favorite of his. So that's why I gave it to Al Pacino.
No Godfather cred lost on you, Dale. I also got to say, just a note on your choice there. Yeah, just like absolutely right after Sal dies, and then they come in with the guns. He's like, okay, well, I have no leverage here, and then he's just like, okay, all right. He's finally just given up, and I'm just like, ugh, heartbreaking. Yeah, that's a great pick. I had it locked down to 2. He actually wasn't one of the 2.
Oh, okay.
So I still have my number 1, but yeah, I'll throw in the honorable mention as well. But yeah, my number 1 is Jack Nicholson. After watching this, I had to look it up because I was like, he did win, right? And then I was like, of course he did. Okay. No hard feelings to Al Pacino there. He was also nominated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it was the 2 of them and then 3 other movie actors from other movies.
So
Walter Matthau for The Sunshine Boys, Maximilian Schell for The Man in the Glass Booth, and James Whitmore in Give 'Em Hell, Harry.
Right. So, Jack Nicholson for me, just like, well, I mean, I picked that as my favorite movie, right? One of my 2 favorite movies, but Jack Nicholson, like I said, just the way he takes this unlikable character at first, you hear him talking gross about this girl and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, dude. But then slowly he starts to, build up all these people, and just his relationship with Chief in this movie, who probably could have also been on this list of one of the best actors throughout, as Chief. I'm sorry, I don't know his real name. But he, the way he inspires this guy,
Will Sampson.
Perfect. Yeah, this guy is a large dude, and he's just like silent, and he's still trying to talk to this guy. He gets him to raise his hand, gets him to play basketball, and just loosen up. And, be like this actual person. And then he's like, you don't have to be this trudging around Frankenstein guy. You can be like a real person. And then he slowly builds him up. And it gets to the point where they kind of like become the best of friends pretty much. And like they want to escape to Canada together. Chief learns from him, and he ends up putting him out of his misery because he's like, I can't leave you here like this.
Right.
And then he ends up picking up that water thing and throwing out the window and escaping. And it's a beautiful shot of him escaping. And you're like, that's all because of this guy. And I just think Jack Nicholson just like embodies this guy, like, just basically so similar to your pick, where he's so energetic and trying to liven up these people. Like Al Pacino is trying to live up this, town and, be like, you're all like, this is, you're all like trapped, and these police do not care about you at all, Attica. And, so he's kind of trying to liven them like, aren't you an American? Don't you want to watch the World Series? Or you just want to work and just do the shit that you've been doing under this idiot who doesn't even want you to be a person and just will shock you to death if you do anything wrong.
Something done! I want something done! I want something done!
And that's just the one that crushes it for me the most, and I just had to pick Jack Nicholson. As soon as I saw that, I was like, never mind.
Who was your
my runner-up? Was Robert Shaw, Quint.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was like, fucking Quint, dude.
Now, Chad, you get the priority of picking your best actress first, and I have a feeling I know where it's going, but why don't you tell me?
I may make this hard on you. I don't know. I don't know how many you have stacked up, but it was easy for me. I only had to have one. I do have a runner-up just in case, like,
just tell me your pick, Chad.
My pick is Louise Fletcher, Nurse Ratched. So, you kind of just explained pretty much everything I wanted to say about her. There was a couple little things I wanted to add because, like, she is so evil, basically. Like I don't know how she was raised or whatever, but she thinks she's doing the right thing for these people, I think. Or she just gets a high on the power or something. Yeah. But there's some times where, like, she's kind of nice to them in a very shallow way, and you're like, sometimes she is kind of nice. And then you're just like, you can see why these people don't just rebel against this lady. Obviously, she's a person of authority, but, like, she has these moments of niceness and stuff. And, she just, like, shows that so well, where you're just like, you can see how she easily, because that's how people who manipulate you do, is that they'll give you the nice, then
Yeah, the idea that you're being comforted by me, like,
Yep.
no, I'm taking care of you. No, yeah, you're good, and then and cut your throat,
And then just the way she like you were saying, restricted thing from people, and then she just like blames other people. So she's like, the reason are you done? Are you done? Now, once you stop being yelling, I will tell you
She's
why I
talking
did
to them
this.
like she's their baby.
I heard your question, Mr. Cheswick, and I will answer your question as soon as you've calmed down.
She does a great job, and I just wanted to compare her to two other figures. One that you really don't like. Recently, you were telling me Dolores Umbridge. I have her back here, Dolores Umbridge, but she does it way more subdued than Dolores does. Dolores has like crazy outbursts. And then another one I wanted to compare it to is Annie Wilkes from Misery. When what's her name? Kathy Bates. She also does this one kind of thing where she seems very likable. I love you. You're my favorite author. And then she has these crazy outbursts, but she does it in a much more subdued way, which, like you said, is really great. So
it makes it more haunting. So my pick, I figured you were going to go with Louise Fletcher just because she's the obvious choice, I guess. There were a lot of actresses from Nashville that were nominated for the Oscar, but I didn't find one in that film that really stuck out to me above the others. I thought they were all very, very good. And I looked around. Dog Day Afternoon, there weren't any. Barry Lyndon, there weren't any that was jumping out to me. And then I went to Jaws, and I was like, there's no real actress in Jaws, but the one moment in that movie that makes me cry is the moment with Lee Fierro, Alex's mother, when Alex dies.
Miss Kittner.
And that is why Lee Fierro is my pick for Best Actress of 1975. Dude. That is my unconventional choice, but I figured, if in a whole movie about a shark and these three guys on a boat and this adventure, if the moment that makes me tear up the most is a moment where this mother is crying about losing her child.
You knew all those things. But still, my boy is dead now.
That moment is the one moment in the movie that every time I watch, I get the same reaction every time, and it's this gut punch. I didn't mention it earlier because I'm saving it for now. Like, that moment is my favorite moment of the film because it's not the horror stuff. It's the human emotions and the cause and effect of other people's actions. And again, he's not a villain by any means, but Chief Brody makes a bad call. He decides to go with the mayor and what the mayor was doing, and it ends up costing this kid's life. And like you said with the COVID thing, it could be the equivalent of someone saying, well, people died, but no one I knew died. It's the same thing. It's like, even if it wasn't your family, it's her kid. Her life is forever changed by his actions, which is, again, the mayor's actions. So the mayor's on Brody's actions. But, it's really powerful. And she's such a small part. But she does such a good job in such a small role, and she steals the film in just that one moment. Not the entire film, obviously. Like, it would go on the same without her, but at the same time, like, there's just something about her performance that is just so meaningful and powerful, and it's just one of those moments in cinema that I think is underrated, honestly. That really just takes my breath away, just in how raw and emotional it is.
Yeah, I mean, Jaws is one of those movies, like I was saying, like, I don't think you could take that out. I think the weight of that, of having if you just have the kid die and then nobody talks about it again, you don't have that weight. And like you said, it affected you so much. I think it is an unconventional choice, but that doesn't make it not a great one. I think it's a great choice. I was sitting there thinking when I was watching Jaws, my wife was like, I would have slapped him too. I was like, right. And, so you're basically like, yeah, shit, like Mrs. Kittner. She was great in that movie. I thought maybe you might go Barbara Jean from Nashville, but then also, and then when you said Jaws, I thought you were gonna go Mrs. Brody or whatever.
Okay,
you went Kittner. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I figured, you know what? With a slate with less female performances, why not go for a more unconventional choice? It would be fun.
I like
so,
that, dude.
In the end, the best picture choice for 1975 between the two of us, commonality, was Jaws. Chad's pick for best actor was Jack Nicholson. My pick for best actor was Al Pacino. Chad's pick for best actress was Louise Fletcher, and mine was Lee Fierro, a.k.a. Miss Kittner. So there you go.
Both our actresses have the initials LF. I just realized.
Oh wow, there you go. So maybe, and both our actors do not.
Wait.
So maybe we're drinking the same Kool-Aid, Chad. Any last words about 1975 before I tease the next month of films?
Great year of film. What's the next one, Dill?
I was gonna say. Now we're going way back in time. We're going somewhere over the rainbow to 1939, which is one of the most critically acclaimed years of cinema. I mean, we've really been hitting some heavy hitters. 1994, 1975, and now 1939. 1939 gave us two of the most iconic classic Hollywood productions ever made, which I'll get to in a sec, and then some other great films that are also renowned, some on the AFI Top 100, some that have not been mentioned since they came out, but we're going to talk about them anyway, and all of them, I did check, are available in some way, shape, or form on streaming, so it's not like we're going to have to like dig too deep like some of the 1944 ones, but the movies for 1939, there are a full 10 of them. So we've got our work cut out for us, Chad. Enjoy this.
Why did we do this?
We did this. We did this together. The films for 1939 are the Bette Davis film Dark Victory, the eventual Best Picture winner, which is one of the two blockbusters I was talking about, Gone with the Wind, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, Love Affair, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington,
heard of that.
Ninotchka, Of Mice and Men, Stagecoach, and The Wizard of Oz, and Wuthering Heights. So those are all the movies for next month. There's a lot of heavy hitters there. Of course, the two big ones are Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz, but Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is one that's talked about a lot. Of Mice and Men's a great book that has been adapted a few times.
I've also read Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, Wuthering Heights is a famous book. Stagecoach is a John Wayne Western. You've got Goodbye, Mr. Chips is a popular one. A lot of good films.
I've never seen a John Wayne Western, so I'm down to watch one.
And Dark Victory has a special star that I will wait for you to discover, Chad. One of its cast members may be someone very, very, very memorable in other areas other than film. You'll have to wait and see what that is. I'll let you figure it out on yourself, by yourself. So that is a slate for next month. It's going to be a lot of fun. I had a great time talking about 1975. How about you, Chad?
Oh, yes, I had a blast. I loved watching these movies.
Chad, where can they find you on the internet?
I do some trivia, and now I'm starting to do some debating around like some, leagues on Facebook and YouTube around the bend. That's basically it. I mean, I also do some like reviews on Letterboxd. I'm barely on Twitter, but I have one. I'm Chadwick _ Webb in a lot of places.
Go help him. Help him grow his followership, so maybe he will post more on his Twitter. Who knows?
Probably.
You can find me at Letterboxd and Twitter at Dylan _Randazzo, and here on the Dill Pickle Movie Network, doing a lot of fun things. This is always one of the most fun things to do every month, and I can't wait to now get into 10 more movies, which I cannot wait to watch and talk about. And maybe we'll sing a little Judy Garland next time if we're up for it.
I'm down.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to dress up as like the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion or something. But we'll talk about that off air. Anyway, thank you all for joining. See you next month with 1939.